Hey everybody, it's Theta, aka the Monotone Messiah. Just a few things before I get started. Number one, the ASMR content's on the way. A lot of people said that they wanted it after I mentioned it, so that'll be here shortly. Number two, I created a Discord channel, link in the description. That was by popular demand. I was not planning on making that, but everyone asked for it. Also, big thank you to Eric for President. He mentioned some of my content and was a huge boost to my subscriber and view count, so thank you for that. Go subscribe to him if you don't already. He's got great VR content. And just in general, thank you to everybody who's subscribing and watching the stuff that I'm making. I'm still just captivated by the fact that people are willing to watch what I create. And people have been bringing up the possibility of merch. I was thinking of just making a hat or a t-shirt for myself because I like the logo. But if anybody here is interested in that, let me know and we'll go from there. And lastly, if you want to contribute in some way that doesn't involve any kind of monetary transaction or whatever, please feel free to share my content on social media. I've noticed that that makes a big difference and that motivates me to make more content. So post videos on Twitter, Reddit, whatever. Anyway, today's video is a bit more of a stripped down version of the settings and loadouts video I created. It's focused on specifically what the best loadouts are for beginners, with a few pointers about how to use the weapons. So if you want something more comprehensive, go watch my settings and loadouts video. Everything is roughly the same, even since the update. All right, let's get into it. Before we get started, just want to communicate a real simple idea here, which is you should not focus on doing tons of experimentation early on when it comes to loadouts, because this game is designed so that there are, quite frankly, superior weapons to others. There's sort of an illusion of variety in that sense. There's only a few weapons you should use, and for each class there's generally only one or two weapons that are viable, and there are some experts in the game who can make do with the other weapons, but what matters when you're first starting out is just learning how to play the game itself and not worrying about how to aim or how to reload or fumbling around with a new weapon. All that being said, in my opinion, the best class, no matter which side you pick for a beginner, is going to be rifleman. Specialist, support, marksman, they all have their own quirks that will take some time to figure out, and it's best to just jump into rifleman because it's the simplest, easiest, and most effective beginner class there is, in my opinion. So when you get in, select rifleman. I'm going to pick the AK-12 here. I think it is the only real viable Volk rifleman weapon. Some people like to use the SKS, but in general, I wouldn't recommend toying around with the other ones, especially the G3, because the G3 has a support version that has a drum magazine, which is much better. Once you pick this AK-12, pick either the holographic sight or the red dot sight. Those are really the only two sights you should be playing with right now. They're the most refined ones with the best sight pictures. Some people don't like the Volk red dot, but whatever, just on either side, holographic or red dot. Don't toy around with the long-range sights, especially on riflemen. You're just going to get yourself killed, and it's going to be a disorienting, difficult experience for you. I personally prefer the holographic sight. Foregrip's very important because, as you can see by this red line, it reduces the recoil substantially. It cuts it almost in half. This is true for every single weapon in the game that can take a foregrip. Take a foregrip. It makes the gun more controllable. Don't bring a laser sight. Don't bring a suppressor. For reasons that are better explained in my other video, they are a waste of points, almost always. For ammunition, just take full metal jacket. Tracers and AP are not going to help you. Tracer makes you easy to spot because people can just see where the tracer rounds are coming from and kill you much more easily. And all AP does is it negates body armor. First of all, a lot of people don't wear body armor, and second of all, it's not that big of a difference. If you land just one or two more shots on somebody with body armor, it will kill them. But the major downside of having AP rounds is that it reduces the number of magazines you're going to have. As you can see here, you get 4 mags. If you get AP, you get half of that. So it's much better just to have a higher volume of magazines than to worry about a very minor benefit you get from AP. It's important to remember too that AP does not increase overall damage of the rounds. Again, all it does is it negates body armor. You're not doing more damage if you hit outside of body armor. For the pistol, always just pick the one that doesn't cost you any points. The Makarov is the Volk version of this, and it's 0 points. Pistols are basically useless in Onward. There's a few situations, like if you're using a shield on Marsoc, where pistols make sense, but you really should never be depending on the pistol. And in fact, I play with very high level people who purposefully throw their pistol away at the beginning because they have such contempt for it. And for the love of God, do not put any attachments on your pistol. For explosives, I suggest bringing a smoke grenade and a flash grenade. The only reason I say this is because these are non-lethal weapons. They both have specific types of benefits. Smoke can give you cover when you're trying to move across open ground, and flash can blind an opponent if you need to get around a corner without getting killed. And they won't really have substantial consequences if you mess up throwing them. So a flash grenade will blind you or potentially your teammates if you throw it the wrong way, but that's not the end of the world. But if you throw a frag, which you would replace with these two since it's 2 points, so instead of these two you would just take one frag. If you throw a frag and you don't know what you're doing, potentially kill yourself and even your teammates. So learn how to throw these first, and then start playing with the frag grenades. For this loadout, I'm recommending body armor. I don't personally run body armor anymore, despite what my first video about this said. I found that I'm at least at the level where it doesn't make enough of a difference for me to justify the points that are being taken away. I'd rather be able to take a frag and a flash or something. Anyway, when you're a beginner, it does buy you just a tiny little edge of survivability, because you can have a few more situations where you just get downed instead of die, and it can also allow you to absorb 1 or 2 more rounds. So it just gives you a slightly better chance of survival. When you're playing against high-level people, that margin of error is so small it's pretty much insignificant. But playing with other novices, this could be a big benefit, so pack body armor. And you'll see this gives us 9 out of 9 points, which is the most you can get. Press confirm and you'll enter the game. Here we are in the shooting range. Grip the front with the foregrip and fire it by pulling the trigger. One thing a lot of new players don't understand is when you need to change the mag, you can't just drop it out. You have to actually grab it. And it depends on your specific controller, but on the Oculus CV1 that I use, you hold down the A, which is on the right controller, and then you just pull the mag out. There are a bunch of guns that require this, not all of them. You can see it's an empty mag, so reach for another one, put it in, and this gun you have to cock it manually if you want it to load after you have an empty magazine. There will occasionally be situations where you want to change your mag and it's not empty. This is a mistake I see a lot of players make, is that they pull out the mag and then they cycle around. But you don't have to do that. See, these rounds are still in there, put it in. There's already a round cocked at that point, so you can just keep firing. If you change a full mag or partially full mag, and you cycle the bolt, you will just send rounds out of the magazine, and you can do this until it's completely out, which is not what most people do, but you'll still be wasting a round in many cases. So just look at your magazine as you're pulling it out, and look to see if there are any rounds in there, which looks like that. You'll see there are rounds still in the magazine. If you need to change the mag, let's say you fired a bunch of rounds at an enemy and you don't want to be caught with an empty mag, if you see him again, it's common to pull this out and look at the rounds, make sure it's not empty, and then just put a new one in. You don't have to cycle the bolt. In the name of saving time, I'm only going to go over the Makarov, which is the Volk pistol I recommend, because all pistols operate the same way. So we're firing here. Now this is important. You drop the magazine out, grab another one, and you don't have to manually touch the slide if you don't want to. You can if you just want to feel cool or whatever, but on the Oculus CV1 touch controllers at least, you can just press the B button on the right side, and that'll vary depending on what headset you're using. And that will do it for you, and that in many cases will save you time, as you can see. You still can do it manually if you want to just feel tactical or whatever, but it's not really that useful. And that's really all there is to say about pistols. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through an entire Marsoc loadout. I'll just show you which weapon I prefer. It's the AK-5C. The other viable option, in my opinion, is the M16A4. The only real difference is the M16 has burst fire, as opposed to the AK-5C's automatic fire. And everything else is exactly the same on the loadout. The only reason I'm highlighting this at all is because there is a difference in how the magazines work. So you can see here, I just pressed a button. I pressed the same button you would hold that you have to hold if you want to change the magazine on the AK-12. But on certain weapons, like the AK-5C and the M16A4, and a few others, you just press a button and the magazine drops. You don't have to worry about holding it and then grabbing the magazine. It can be a little disorienting to realize that there's a difference if you're not used to that, but it's important to highlight. You just drop it in. And again, this is another slight difference. For some of these weapons, like the M16A4 and the AK-5C, you don't have to cycle the bolt, just like with the pistol. You can just press, again, on the CV1 on the right controller, the A button, and it'll just go there automatically. If you want to, you can cycle it. And just like I was showing in that earlier bit where I was talking about cycling the bolt and wasting rounds, if you put in a non-empty, or excuse me, you pull out a non-empty magazine and then you put a full one in, you do not need to cycle the bolt. You don't need to press the button either. Just put it in and fire, because you already have one ready to go. All right, let's talk about grenades. They're pretty easy to use, but let's just do a quick review. So, this is a flashbang. You reach up, you pull the trigger, that pulls the pin. As long as it's in your hand, it will not go off, but the moment you release it, the countdown is on, and flashbangs go pretty quick. Throw with an underhand, that gives you the best arc. It's just easier to manage, plus you're less likely to bang your hand into something in your environment if you're playing in tight quarters. And there's the flashbang. Smokes are pretty much the same story, it's just a different effect afterwards. You pull the pin, underhand toss, and you get smoke. You also have a knife, which for me is on my left shoulder because I'm right-handed, so I just reach up to my left shoulder and grip it. And you can stab people. I cover this deeper in my settings and loadouts video and show you where it is, but there is a setting called push to kill. I recommend you turn that off, because if you don't, then what happens is if you're reviving somebody or something and you accidentally grab the knife, you will kill them while they're on the ground. It's also just really easy to kill people in general if you're running nearby teammates and you tap them with a knife. If you turn on push to kill, then that means you have to hold the trigger in order for the knife to actually do damage to people. So I recommend that. It's also worth mentioning night vision, because there are maps where it makes sense. So what I recommend you do is, first of all, have a separate loadout just for night vision. I always have one non-night vision and one night vision loadout, so keep that in mind. They're identical except for night vision. You don't have to play around with anything else. And the trade-off that you have to make, because you only have 9 points, is I would generally just remove a smoke or a flash. Again, if you're a beginner, don't remove the body armor, unless you're feeling frisky, I don't know. And this will give you a pretty decent loadout. And if it's a larger map, I would say just go with smokes, because that'll give you cover if you need to cross open areas. If it's a smaller map, take a flash, because that'll allow you to blind people in close proximity. Night vision is very easy to use. You just reach your hand up to your forehead, press the trigger, and that activates the night vision, because the night vision is mounted on your helmet. And if you want to turn it off, you just do the same thing. It's also just considered good etiquette to fire off a few rounds and then throw your gun in the most creative place possible after you've finished a round and you're still alive. This is the mark of the true League player. It's worth being good at throwing things in exotic places, because nothing says, I've used my time on this earth wisely, than being able to demonstrate you can throw a pistol into a guard tower. Well, that's all I've got for today. As I said at the beginning, if you want something more in-depth, talks about all the different types of loadouts and all that, you can watch my original video, and even though we're in a new version of Onward, all that stuff is more or less the same. There are no real differences that I can tell. So go watch that. And if you want to reach me, you can come to my new Discord channel, again, link in the description. You can also find me on Twitter at Theta VR. or you can come find me just in the regular Onward Discord. I'm around pretty much all the time. So this is Theta, signing off.